This meeting is being recorded.
Hey y'all, I'll go ahead and get us started. Just to confirm, you can hear me, correct?
Yes, yes, we can hear you good. She said,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Well, I will go ahead and get us started. Thank y'all for joining us today. And just want to go through, what this genealogy or what this event is. It is part of the programming that the Ice Chapel Rosenwald has decided to kind of put on. We kind of aim to do more community related events, so we can start giving back to the community a little bit more, right? For the last 3 years, we've been operating the museum here in the Watson area, while also operating our STEM program that has traditionally been a part of, or we've recruited primarily from the Byhalia high school area. But going into the next school year, um, we're looking for opportunities for more county schools to be a part of it, right? Especially students who live here within the vicinity of the school. So just kind of give some background information of what the Ice Chapel Rosemont is. It's broken up into two groups, right? We have the museum piece, which is the piece that's organizing this event today. And then we have the educational center. The educational center is the arm of the group that kind of involves the education piece, involves the outreach to the youth in terms of technology and things like that. And sure, you'll see the museum arm also doing a similar level of outreach, right? But of course, that's more so history focused, while the educational piece may be more so technology focused. Um, Going into this year, there are three main objectives that the museum kind of sees as a priority. One is kind of sustaining the museum and being able to tell that story of history within the county, and then being able to collect and continue to tell and enrich those stories. As we kind of see, we want to be able to capture some of those family histories, and again, to make it a part of Marshall County history, because a lot of those stories have just been kind of restricted to just families for years and years. But the museum here is meant to be that catalyst. It's meant to be that focal point, that hub for all of that history. Part of that also is exploring genealogy, right? uh, and being able to kind of uncover some of those records that have historically kind of been kind of inaccessible, but then kind of exploring how do we access those things, and then being able to be good stewards of the community, being able to volunteer, right? There are going to be events throughout the year where there's going to be different opportunities to volunteer, whether that's picking up trash, cooking for somebody, you name it. We want to try to help facilitate that. And then kind of going into the educational piece, of course, we currently operate a STEM program that I mentioned earlier, and we've been doing that now for about the last 3 years. Looking at increasing our collaboration with some of the local schools, um, to get more 3D printing, for instance, in those schools, to again enrich some of those aspects of education. And then we want to look at more adult education, right? Where are those opportunities to, to keep folks kind of in mind of the best ways to kind of navigate the internet, for instance, best practices on social media. How do you protect yourself? We want to make sure that we have the opportunity to kind of explore that. So, just one second, y'all. We got somebody that just walked in. Hey, how you doing? I'm good, good, good. Feel free to come on in. We are sharing.
I'm gonna get my pet out the car.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. I will somewhat turn. Bear with me, y'all. We're getting there. All right. So looking at our workshop for this morning, just some of the key topics that we want to make sure that we go over. For instance, we got discussion of family lore and understanding what information is currently available when starting off your genealogy journey. What information can we rely on and start looking into that kind of helps to tell that story? And then a review of some of the common genealogy resources online. I think a lot of folks are already familiar with Ancestry. Now, Ancestry does cost, right? There's a subscription fee, but there are also certain aspects that they do offer for free to get you to use the service for sure, but it can also be a helpful tool or a piece of tools or numerous tools that can be helpful. And then Family Search. Family Search is entirely free. We'll be going and exploring that as well to kind of see, what pieces of information is there. Doing all right.
Okay.
Good, good. We are live streaming, so just a heads up. They can hear you, but they can't see you. And y'all feel free to chime in and ask questions as we go through things as well. And then number 3, how do we interpret some of the common records? We'll be going through some of those examples, census records, things like that, marriage records, death records, and then birth records. Number 4, as we review all of these tools, we have case study, right? Who are some of those individuals that maybe we can kind of lean on and kind of explore or kind of go back in time with. And then number 5, just a review of some of the other resources that may be available that are accessible here at the museum. So as we go ahead and get going, I have somewhat of a file here. Family lore. Let me go back. So in this case, should still open. Yeah. So we've all heard it. We know a little bit about it. We know that families share history orally. Probably one of the more common methods of kind of collecting it, and they tell stories through different generations. Very seldom have you seen the families write a lot of that stuff down. Now, we're in the 21st century, we start seeing a lot more of that being documented, written down, whether in just family records, church Bibles, family Bibles, and even in some of the church histories as well. But you start seeing a lot more of that stuff documented. Now, in my specific case, I was fortunate enough to be the youngest of six, and I had siblings, two sisters, who had done some of that groundwork for me back in the early '80s before I was even thought of. But that information was available to me to then kind of lean on as a source of truth, because in this situation, what you guys are seeing here now on my screen is a family tree that my sisters did for a project at Bahalia High School. And they got this information by going to their grandparents, Miss Cleo Phillips on my mom's side, and then my grandmother, Lurleen McClarity on my dad's side. And they questioned them. Who was who? Who was your parents? And things like that. And it only goes back so far because a lot of that has traditionally been primarily oral, unless you're fortunate enough for it to be written in the family Bible, and then you got to find the family Bible, whoever has that, right? But in this specific case, we were fortunate enough to, get our names kind of down on the family tree. And in this case, my sister Marilyn did this copy. Now, again, Marilyn and Rose both had copies of this. They wrote out their own ones. So Rose had her own copy. Maryland had her own copy, but this specific one, I believe, may be Maryland's. And she started listening out like who was who, right? Winston Churchill McClarity, which was my dad, Maxine McClarity or Maxine Phillips McClarity, and whatnot, and their siblings. And then we were lucky enough to then even go back a little bit further, right? Who were the parents of Winston? We have Felix, and then we have Lurleen, and then who were their siblings as well, right? And it's all listed there. So I was fortunate enough in my specific use case to understand that I had the foundation that was needed to kind of get things started. So who was the mother of my mom? Miss Cleo Phillips, or Miss Cleo Sanderson Phillips, right? You have Rufus Phillips, and then you go down to Van Sanderson, and then you go down to Willie Jean Sanderson, and then who are all those different people? Now, I'm not sure who this person is just yet, but that's part of what I have to kind of do in my own journey to kind of understand, why did that person even get their name on there? Who is that Jones person? Is that a piece of it? So this map or this family tree roughly goes back almost 150 years, roughly. Um, and it was enough of a starting point to get us going, to get me going on figuring out what was what. So from this, I originally turned to Ancestry. Just a show of hands for the folks in the room. Who has used Ancestry? So all of us. So there's three of us in the room currently, y'all. And I'll open that question up online. Feel free to put it in the chat or even verbally say it. Has anybody online used Ancestry? I feel like we all have at some point. We're familiar with that. Okay. Yep. And y'all, I mean, so y'all know how to navigate it. It is, I mentioned this earlier. Part of this is subscription driven, and part of it is free, right? And there is a lot of information there, and it's a good place to collaborate. So, for instance, this is my dashboard. It identifies after I'm logged in. It identifies my name. I have the ability to look at the different trees, and we'll look at that in a second. I have several. And then I can search for particular records, memories, and then I have chats and things like that. And if I wanted to start a tree, I could, all right? So lucky for us, and we're not new to this, no one on the call is, I started my tree and I started going through it, building it out to the best of my knowledge. And the fun thing about Ancestry is it will start to give you hints on certain members of your tree, and it'll ask you to validate this. Now, you can do this all under the free subscription, right? That's part of their model. That's how they make money. But they get that information and they compile it into this central place, so other people will similarly get those same hints, right? Because the hints that I'm getting were partially due to other people finding out clues and finding out all these different pieces of information. So, for instance, if I look at Mama Clee, she has 11 hints there that have just popped up, and I've just clicked on that. And it's loading. Notice how it's blocked off for me. So I'm not sure what this is. It's blocked off because I hadn't paid it, y'all. But I'm using the free subscription now. So a lot of these hints may not necessarily be true. But the point here is hints are good, but they do require validation. And all of the hints aren't good hints. so that's why it's important to get multiple sources. And us being, or a lot of us being on the call, being African American, that there are a lot of information that we don't have, right? And that kind of limits how far back in time we can go. But it is possible to kind of collect all the breadcrumbs and all the evidence to then make conclusions. And what's key here is being able to get enough evidence to then make a sound conclusion. And that's what we essentially have to do when doing genealogy. And that holds true, white, black, Hispanic, you name it. You have to, when you don't know something, you try to collect evidence and you try to get it all to try to come to that conclusion. So this tree, luckily for me, I was able to kind of build it out in part because of some of the hints that were given, in part because I had access to a strong foundation that my sisters kind of put together in terms of a family tree. And then I was able to kind of build that out. Now, this particular tree has a good number of individuals on it. You can see it. And maybe as I kind of click on certain pieces, for instance, my grandfather, who was the father of Winston, my father, I can click on him and I could look at history, putting the focus on him, and it kind of filters it out for me, right? So I can see that Felix married Lurleen, which was my grandmother, and one of the sources that my sisters used. And I can see that his parents were Burrow McClarity and Ida B. Jones, right? All from Marshall County, because we know that through family lore and family history. And then also, fun fact, I know that through just different records and things that I've come across in my own research. But it has a substantial number of people on here, and it requires validation. And in some cases, right, we can even uncover family photos that we didn't know existed. So in this case, this is a great uncle of mine, Walter McClarity, who left Marshall County to go up to Chicago and lived. And that's where he lived the rest of his days. But those are one of the perks, right, of being able to leverage a tool like Ancestry, because you can start uncovering a lot of information. For instance, Ancestry uses a algorithm not only to kind of rely on other people's inputs, but they also use an algorithm to look at documents too and read that. So keep in mind that there are a lot of old deeds out there. There are a lot of marriage certificates out there that we'll be going over next that are written down and documented. And Ancestry does a really good job at deciphering through that and at least presenting you with information.
Also, Alex, the Social Security Administration, they have those documents as well. That's where I ran up on some of, they had his death
Yep.
certificate and another one about mom's death
Yep.
certificate. run up on them like, wow.
That's right.
And you can find out what they got.
Yep. And right. And Gracie, if you guys just heard that, Gracie just called out how the Social Security Administration has a lot of those records, and it, of course, documents a lot of personal information about these people, again, that have been gone for decades. And those are good sources. And Ancestry, because what Ancestry will show you is a reference number. They'll show you little pieces of it. But what Gracie just called out is you can go to the Social Security Administration or follow some process of getting the actual document. And that's going to be very important as you kind of explore and validate people. Yes, ma'am.
If you're on Ancestry.com and you have a paid prescription, you can also get a prescription for newspapers.com. And I had that. I was able to find my great-grandmother and great-great-grandmother in St. Louis newspaper. And I remember the names as a child, different cousins and so forth. That's more validation.
That is a good point. So with that, again, and I'll just repeat that, with that subscription, it comes with newspapers.com.
No, you have to pay.
You have to pay a little bit extra, but it has a large database of, different newspapers across the country. And you were able to find your they're in St. Louis. Do you remember what the story was about, or?
My family were farmers, so it was some kind of farm. One uncle, he won first prize for a pig. My grandmother for making a quilt.
Yeah.
And my uncle had did a lot of ancestry information before Ancestry.com.
Yeah.
I had, when he passed, they gave me the information. I have binders of family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Binders.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm really blessed.
Yeah. So that is a good point. Now, I will say this, and if there are a lot of microfilm, and I don't know who's familiar with microfilm.
That's where I got started.
If you were to go up to the Holly Springs Library, they have microfilm for the South Reporter for down here. If you go to the State Archives, they also have microfilm of the South Reporter newspaper, including other defunct newspapers that once existed too for the area. So locally, that is a one way to approach it. But I feel like newspaper.com, I've used it once before as well, and it's been very helpful. I've been able to find several things there as well. And then also the courthouse has a lot of newspapers from about 50 years, probably about 60, 70 years now there. And it, again, it's all local, but it's a pretty cool source of information.
Paid ancestry, you can get death notices also.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yes.
And also with Ancestry, either one of these researchers that document that have these research, you just pay for. You can always cancel. You don't have to pay a subscription the whole year. Once you get what you need,
Look,
and you don't have so much to keep you busy for a year. So,
I'll tell you what, because I feel I'm cheap. I will use Ancestry for whatever period of time. I'll pay that monthly, and then I'll cancel it and wait till it dies out, right? And then I'll get as much information as I can, or at least leads to then start doing some additional research. I know I probably shouldn't do that, but it's paid for it, and that's the purpose, right? So I use it when I need it, and then I just cancel it. but yeah.
You might be working on a family project for 2 years.
Yep.
2 months.
Yep.
And then the rest of the time, you got so much to keep you busy.
Yeah. Well, I got to ask this question: has anybody done, including the folks online, has anybody done a DNA test yet? You've done yours. Oh, okay.
My father, myself, and my daughter.
Okay. You haven't done it yet? Has anybody online did it?
I helped 2 people find family members.
Did you? So we got to talk about that near the end. I'm reading through it. So sorry, I was missing some of the chats. I think Coco, if I didn't answer that question about or if we hadn't answered that yet, you just let us know. as far as the benefits and what do we get with Ancestry. Yep, that's right. So Van Sanderson, I think on my tree might have been 1981, and you're right. 1981 would have been too late of a date for him to be documented as dying. So that goes back to making sure that you have valid pieces of information, because Van Sanderson was long gone by then. Yep. So, Cole, somebody uploaded. So the question was, how was Walter's photo uploaded? And I want to see. So again, Walter McClarty lived to about 1954. He was the oldest son of Burrow. His mother was Ella Rankin. So he had several, not several, but he had several half siblings, because Burrell McClarty was married a total of 3 times. So Burrell McClarty married Ida McClarty, and Ida McClarty, or Ida Jones, was his last wife. Now, in the case of Walter, let me see if it reveals this. It's for sure a photo that was given by a relative on here, but I'm not sure if it reveals who gave it up, right?
On the page it would.
Mm-hmm. Should be under sources, or
When you go to photo gallery,
Mhm.
you should have it on there, I think.
yeah, you're right. But it is available, and that may be something too that we can talk about offline. But we know that this is him in part because we have some of his descendants confirmed that was him. So his grandchildren. So we feel comfortable that that's for sure him. And notice how when clicking on his profile, it gives the different sources of kind of like different things. For instance, a death certificate, or at least documentation of him dying in Chicago, or at least Cook County. And then it gives information about his draft cards and then his children, right? So all of these individuals are his children listed here, and that's confirmed. But again, as you build these trees, it requires some due diligence to make sure that it's accurate. Because and I will be the first to say, there are some mistakes in here that still need to be resolved, such as Mallard Jones. I'm not sure if that was even an actual child of Burrow. Hadn't confirmed that yet, but it does show up, right? So that's something that has to be explored.
Also, Alex, when it comes to, I forgot what system report it is.
Mm-hmm.
When it came to Uncle Baker, who
Mhm.
was Clifton, they had him listed as Bud.
Mm-hmm.
And A. Lee and A. Clee, they had them listed as Mel.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of people are typing this stuff in.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on where. I know at like ancestors at 81 for grandpa, great grandpa, that typo error.
Mm-hmm.
And then so that is when we find these errors, we need to like see what is it that we can do to correct it, because we're leaving this is a trail for the next generation, and we want to make sure we get it right.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
My cousin told me what, back in the country, what they would do, the census person would go to the different schools and just ask the principal, now who lives over here, to give the principal some money, and that kept them from going door to door. So they got information that way too. So, because the principal knew everybody in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
He could tell you who had whose kids and all that.
Yeah. There are records that date back to 1880. Forgot the name of the record. I think it's Educationable Children of Mississippi. It's essentially a record of school-age children in 1880, and it documents both Black and white students who were in school and where they went to school. It was done by county. So it was similar to a census. But in this case, people walked through the neighborhoods or they went to the schools, similar to that approach, and they asked, like, where does this child live? Who are their parents? And then the principal, the administration, had to supply that. I'm not totally sure. That was one of the sources, but I'm not totally sure when they stopped doing that. But if it for sure existed in 1880.
The 1890 census was lost.
Yep, the 1890 census was lost. Do you know how?
Fire.
Fire. That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
You know, that was one of my hindrances.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
you-
There's this huge gap, 20-year gap.
Because if someone passed away during that time or was born during that time,
You lose it. You lost it. So now here's where trees start to kind of differ too. Now I what I've started doing was managing my tree offline, and with the hopes of course, correcting the information.
How do you do that?
So Microsoft has a software where if you have a computer and you got enough space on it, you can download it, and it's called My Family Tree.
Oh.
It's completely offline, and it requires individuals to manually input that information. Now, you don't have the benefit of relying on digital sources directly and automatically being imported. You have to manually manage that. So in my own experience, after I noticed that some of the information wasn't the best, follow me here. I used the original tree that my sisters put together to get clues to then build an ancestry family tree. And from that ancestry family tree, I then built my own personal family tree that was offline. And I did that primarily because I didn't want it to be tied into the internet. I didn't want to have internet access to get to the stuff that I wanted. But
you
yeah,
could have been on vacation.
Yeah.
And you didn't want your information all over.
that was a piece of it too, right? So and I'm showing y'all this because
Because you can work.
right. But I felt more free to kind of put some of the. I don't have everybody on there, but I started putting my own kids on there and some of the photos on there and whatnot too. So here is just an example of that software. Again, it's just another tool to kind of build it out, but I was able to kind of start building it out in a more detailed way without concern of, hey, should I put so and so on the tree or should I leave them out? Especially if they're living, then should I start listing their kids and things like that? But what's important here is being able to document it some way. You can write this thing out, you can use Ancestry, you can do it all, but you have to document it some way so then it can be given to another generation. Gracie, did you mention Lyman or I think earlier you mentioned about the errors in some of the bud.
Baker.
Oh, okay, yeah, Clifton, yeah.
They had bud.
They had him down as
They haven't
bud.
put anything- Those guys just put anything down.
Yep.
Really.
They didn't
were
validate.
They were looking for the number so they can get the heck out of Dodge.
Yeah.
And get on back to where they was coming from.
That's right.
My family, I'm sorry, my family's from Arkansas. One of the census, they list everybody by initials, white
Yep.
and black.
Yep.
J.W. Cole, and that was it. And they go to the next one, S.W. Cole.
Mm-hmm. And I tell you, and we'll see this here in a second. So, we have the tree. Census records are, and I'll go back to Ancestry because I don't want to skip too far. Y'all stop me if I'm going too far or going off the rails a little bit. But you have a tree, and you start building out these different branches. My strategy for building out the tree is to go as far back as I possibly can. Using the census records, I know who's a sibling, who's possibly a cousin, and I keep on going back. That's my spear strategy, is what I call it. But it has worked out well for me. And again, Ancestry has all this information, and I'm going to click on Mama Clee here. Again, Mama Clee is my mother's mother, so my grandmother. Ancestry lists out all these different census records that Mama Clee appears in. She was born in 1921, right? But her, she might have not showed up until like the 1830 census, right? But those are different things that we have to kind of validate, right? So then the question is, where do I validate and how can I get this information, right? With the paid subscription to Ancestry, you definitely have this information at your fingertips. And then if it's old enough, even folks without subscription can see it. Let's see. So not it's too recent. But let's say you're using Family Search. Do y'all use Family Search at all? Okay.
I started with Ancestry.
So the Mormon community in Utah, what they've done, they've gone across the entire country.
Your question.
Sure.
Okay, Ancestry, is that part of with the Mormons or is it different?
Ancestry uses the information that the Mormons collected
Okay, and
in their database to build it out. Right. So it's one of the sources, it's one of the sources for the data that you see in Ancestry.
Okay.
So Family Search is a completely free website and is ran by the Mormon community. The Mormons for decades have been going to different areas of the country, different communities, to scan all of the different records that are in existence. So they've come to Marshall County. They've gone up to the courthouse. They've scanned all of the census records that are there on file. They've scanned the deed records. They've scanned all these different things, and in some cases, even newspaper articles. Any official records from the county, they've scanned it and put it in the database. Now, if you were to go to a place like the state archives, they've done the same thing there. They've scanned all the different microfilm and they've made it available online. Now, the catch here is you can only, if you're at the state archives, you can only access that database there on the premises of the institution. So if you try to access it from home, it won't allow you to access it directly. But it's digitized, and in a lot of cases, it's largely indexed as well.
And another thing, Alex, with Family Search, they're constantly adding because last year I found out that Van Sanderson served in the military.
Yeah.
So many of his brothers served in the military, but because previously those records were available.
Yep.
And I remember Big Mom, we were saying that when Dad came home, I'm thinking about coming home from the fishing club. Coming home from the show. And then I did not know there was a period that during World War One that he served.
Yep. A lot of folks who lived in this community, I forgot the name of the day that they called it, but they required all males, including black males, to go up to Mariana to then register for the service. And that's essentially when, they documented who they were, who was my point of contact, things like that. And that's what they did. And everybody in the community, and we'll go through some records like that. I don't have Van Sanderson's just yet, but we may have to find that. But everybody in the community did that. Everybody didn't go. Now there was a lot of political issues with allowing black people to serve in the military during then. A lot of white people at that time felt like black people should be home tending to fields, doing what they do from an agricultural basis. And they didn't want them to hold weapons or to have so much kind of going on for them. So there was a push to not do that. But there were blacks from the Marshall County area that did serve in the military, and then even went over to Europe during that war. So here's Ancestry, not Ancestry, but Family Search. Once you log in again, it is free. And I'm going to click on search here. Now, census records are only available every 70 years. The latest set of records are from 1950. For me, that's important because it is the first time my parents show up in the official census records. But I'm able to then start searching by any individual. In this case, I'm going to do Clee. I'm just going to spell it like that to see what comes up. Phillips. And I'm going to type in Marshall County. Notice Marshall County, Mississippi, United States, and is identified as a county, 1836 to present. And then I'm just going to click search. Now, these are different records that have popped up. Notice how here's a Cleez, maybe Phillips, from the 1900 census from Alcorn County. Here's Cleo Phillips from Marshall County that's featured on Find a Grave. And that's another thing. Family Search utilizes Find a Grave also and takes in all those records to make those documentations. But there's a lot of information here, and I'm seeing different Cleo Phillipses pop up, and I feel very confident that I know who's who. This is my Cleo Phillips, right? Because I'm looking at 1940 census, and I'm looking at who's in the house because I know from family lore who's who. But let's say I want to filter this a little bit more, right? There are filters up here. So if I want to look at collections, I have the ability to look at birth records if they exist, marriage records if they exist, death records, and then census records. I'm going to focus on census. And I'm going to scroll down to the United States Census. And I am going to select all these decades because I want Family Search to provide me census records where Cleo Phillips has popped up. And the reason why I started at 1870 is, can anybody answer that or any thoughts? Not exactly. The reason why I started in 1870 is that's the first census, that blacks were identified on the census by name. Now, I know Mama Clee ain't that old, but I'm just curious. All right. Oh, yeah. But through Family Search, you can identify somebody who was actually born before the Civil War, for instance, and you may be curious as to, oh, snap, where are they? So I've filtered it and I've reduced my list, but let's say I want to reduce it even more by clicking on residence. So I click on my residence filter, United States. It's acting a little funky on me. Let's see if I can. That's new. So that filter won't go down through the county, but normally for whatever reason it is not doing it. It could be a number of different things, but I know enough about my family lore to know that this is my grandmother here. So let's see if I can find 1950. Let's go to an earlier one. Let's start with 1940. So if I were to click on this, notice how census beat 4, Marshall County, birth 1939. That's not correct. So even there are issues that I'm seeing. But I know this is her because her parents, well, let's see what we got here. Okay. So this is a census record. Notice how, again, this is 1940. It shows us who conducted the census and then what part of the community they were in, beat for Mississippi County Marshal. I'm seeing a lot of Eccles. I'm seeing a Rufus Phillips. And in my family tree, he is listed as my grandfather. He's 29. Cleo Phillips, listed as 18. Both of them Negro, one male, one female. And then here are their children. Rufus Jr., and then Cleva May, I'm assuming. Yeah, right. But notice how it's documented Negro, and it's hard to tell what that is, but it looks like a year and some change. And Rufus Jr. might have been maybe 7 months or so, or maybe even a month. It looks like a 1, then slash, then 7. But this is us deciphering one of the census records, right? And we can see here that they were alive and well in 1940. And we know at this time who's all in the house with them.
I like to look at the census to find out relatives, because I found like my grandmother's siblings on there too.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to look at it that way. All of them lived in the same neighborhood.
Oh, yeah. In some of my scenarios, they were neighbors. Before they became related through marriage, they were definitely neighbors. Yeah. Fun fact: anybody who lives in this community may have heard the name Essex Suggs. Notice my grandmother is at the very top, right, of the census record. And I want to say that maybe house 100. No, that's each house was numbered. So 89 or 85, 86, and they were house 86. And then if you go down, you see Essex Suggs, he was house 94. Now, Essex Suggs here at the Rosenwald, he is one of the individuals that we kind of highlight as being these kind of big figures in the community at the time. At this point, he's 60, right? So he's lived a pretty long life for the period. I believe he was a deacon at Parker during his life as well. And he was just one of those civic-minded, community-minded individuals. So you start, to your point, you start seeing individuals that you've heard of and that you've seen to kind of pop up on the census. Let's see if we can find 1850 real quick, because I'm going to adjust some of my filters to see if it gives me some more clarity. Notice how it's giving me folks from Tallahatchie County. There we go. Now the filter works. So what I've done is I've clicked on residents, and then I'm going to say, hey, I want to filter by United States. And then I'm going to click my state. I know for the time period that I'm concerned of, I know that they always lived in Mississippi. So I'm going to click on Mississippi. And then I'm also fortunate enough to know that they've always lived in Marsh County. So I'm going to click on Marsh County, at least in terms of the census. Now, keep in mind, the census is only taken every 10 years. So it's possible that they moved. They could have moved out of the county, but during census time, they were definitely in the county. So there's still some information in here that you can't necessarily 100% go by. Case in point, well, I take that back. This lists out different people that are within my time frame, right? So it's providing information related to anybody that even looks like a Cleve Phillips. But what happens if I change the name to Cleo to better refine my search? That has helped some. But let's say I just want to look at any Phillips. Okay. And then the number kind of grows. What happens if I look at Sanderson and I know that her maiden name was Sanderson? And what's there, right? That's when I started coming into 1930 and Van Sanderson. So if I were to go back to my family tree and looking under the profile for Mama Clee, I noticed that her parents were Van Sanderson and Willie Mae McKinney. So if I look at the census from 1930 and I started looking and seeing who's there, I see Mr. Eccles is still there in 1930. And then I started looking at the Sanderson clan. Notice how I'm seeing Van, Willie, Janie, Hattie. Notice Doll is there. And she is at this point 2 female, right? And then there is my grandmother, Cleve. Yeah.
They have her, and then they have a they said son.
That's right. And some of it is a little off. So what we're seeing here is an example of I can confirm from my family tree that Van and Willie were indeed the parents of my grandmother, Cleve. And she is in the home with all of her siblings there. And again, it's just one data point in time. And this is 1930, kind of showing that off. So, but Family Search is a powerful tool. Again, it is free. And again, it's powered by the Mormons and a lot of the work that they've done. So there are a few other things I want to kind of go through. For instance, case study. So for me, when looking at my tree, I've been able to, of course, identify people and start making dates and things like that. But even looking at some of the information that has come across, find some of the census records. So even for my own records, right, I've been able to kind of capture and save some of those records as reference points. Again, in this case, offline. So if I wanted to, if this will work, let's find out. That worked. So this is one of the census records that was taken off of Family Search. And I can see some of the neighbors. In this case, this is a census record that lists out Lurleen, who is also my grandmother on my dad's side. So my dad's mom. And this is her living in the home of Lizzie Faulkner, which was her grandmother. And her mother was Julia. And again, I know this through family lore, but then this is just confirmation by looking at the census. And this is the census from 1920. It has their age there. It has their race. In this case, they're listed as mulatto. And then you can also, again, see who was all there. Mr. I believe Aaron Jones is there. Aaron Jones at this point is listed as 78, but Aaron Jones was a deacon at Mount Moriah Church. And he also gave, during this period of time when they were taking up slave narratives, he was born a slave, and he documented his experience as a slave. And there are different individuals who lived in the community who did something similar to that, right? But he lists out his time living in Mariana, going to Chulahoma as a slave, stating that he had no, I think 2 or 3 wives, and he had kids, but a lot of them had passed. And at the time of the slave narrative, he was then living with his daughter. But Aaron Jones goes on to become one of the first deacons at Mount Moriah, and that church formed in 1905. So just kind of give that level of perspective there. So census records can be a very powerful tool, especially when trying to explore what's what. Um, and I'm not going to rush. I know I want to be conscious of time, and then also if anybody has any questions, y'all feel free to ask. But also through Family Search, it's possible to look up the different marriage records. And let's see if we can get an example. So from my tree, let's say I want to look up an individual and I would like to look up Burl. In my case, Burl is my great grandfather. He was born in 1852 to 18, and he lived to 1820. He died in 1920. So let's see what Family Search gives me on Mr. Burl McClarity. So I go to Family Search, I type in Burl, and let's see what I find. So the first thing that pops up without any filters, I see Burl M. McClarity in the 1910 census, and I see his wife. His wife is listed as Ida, and just to confirm, his wife on my family tree, or one of his wives, was also Ida. Now, I know that's him, but what all information is there about him, right? He's listed also in on the Illinois Cook County death records. Now, this is important because, to my knowledge and through my research, Burl never left the state, but his kids did. So, in this situation, and I'm going to click on this record because it lists it out as a possible match. Let me go back. Well, in this case, and I'm going to view the records, this is actually a death record for one of his children.
Oh, yeah, they do that.
Yeah. And he's mentioned, and notice how Family Search states that he's mentioned there. And this is for his son, Harvey. So, fun fact,
Yeah.
I have a uncle, not a great uncle, well, great uncle also, who is named Harvey, but that's his namesake. So he was named after his uncle. But he is mentioned here in Harvey's death record. And this is on record in Illinois, in Cook County. And in this particular reference, it lists out Harvey's mother, again, Ida, his father, Burl, and all these different aspects about it. Again, these are some of these breadcrumb clues that we use to kind of piece together family history. So I'm finding, in my case, I'm finding multiple sources that state the wife of Burl being Ida, and Burl being the father of multiple children, right? Which is good because I need to make sure I know who I'm looking at, and it's always the same person. But also, I'm seeing the same thing for Walter. Walter was his one of his kids and whatnot. But then I'm seeing it here for registration during World War One. What could that be? And we kind of mentioned this. Let's see if it gives me what I need.
I like it gives a signature if that person knew how to
Doesn't it?
verify.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Gracie, I think you might have mentioned this, or somebody mentioned it. Yeah, for Van, right? But in this case, this is a record of one of Burl's children signing up for service in World War One, and this is for Uncle Lors, and it is Lorse. He lived all the way into the 80s. and he died in, I believe, the early 80s. Notice how permanent home address, they got his route, because rural postal service had routes more so then, but it was coming to the home. Listed as Holly Springs. His age is 20, February 10th, 1898. That is a 9. Listed as Negro, native born, and his current occupation farming. And he states his dad, Burl, as being his employer. So keep in mind, they're sharecropping at this time, but he wants it to be known that I don't work for them other people. I work for my daddy, and yeah, we're still stuck in this system of sharecropping. His nearest relative, he lists out Burl. Burl, and then the address, and then one helpful thing also is a description of the person who's registering. He's defined as having a medium height, medium build, with color of his eyes being brown and color of his hair being brown. And then you start seeing signatures of other people. So the person who was up there registering folks was A.M. Macaulay. Now, keep in mind, this is Mariana, right up the road from here. And this person is A.M. Macaulay. His name is synonymous with other things that happened in the county. And in this case, A.M. Macaulay was also a doctor. He had a practice in Mariana for the longest. And in the early 20s, he ended up moving to Byhalia. And he bought the home that is now known as Thistledome. So right across the street from the clinic that's next door to the old high school in town. So A.M. Macaulay is important to the investigation of Burrow, in part because he also is listed on Burrow's death certificate. So again, we're looking at a record that's connected to Burrow's child, and this was taken in 1917. We have all these clues in regards to who Lors was, who his employer was, where he lived, his signature. Because keep in mind, it looks like that could be his handwriting, right? I don't see a mark. Yeah, no X. And then I see this individual here of A.M. Macaulay. Now, yeah, yeah. Now, I'm going to kind of cheat here, and I have, see if I can find death certificates, and I have, see if it works for me. I was able to go to the state archives and get Burroughs' death certificate, and in this case, he's listed as Burl McClarty. This was documented, of course, the day, or it began the day he died. It lists out the county of his residence, and then the community, the voting precinct, in this case, Marianne. Not voting, but death certificates for the state of Mississippi did not start until 1912. So individuals who died before 1912 are primarily listed on like a death index or things like that. Now, you'll still find individuals listed on death indexes into the 20s, and then reference is then given to the actual death certificate. So in this case, Burrow has a death certificate, and his certificate number is 2849. So when you come across some of these death indexes, it'll make reference to the county, the person's name, and then also the record. And then he's listed as a male, Negro, and then in at this time he's listed as 73. Right? We know that this is the year 1920. Date of death, February 25th, 1920. And he has, the statement here that was filled out again by A.M. Macaulay. he signed it as the physician there to kind of declare that he was dead, and he signed it multiple times.
Who was the person that gave the information?
The person, good question, the person who gave the information is Walter McClarity.
If it was a girl, she would have known the parents' names. So the males, they don't remember all the information.
Yeah. I think you are 100% right.
I think you're right.
And that is part of the strategy too, and it's been proven very fruitful. When I've done research, I've stayed close to the female side of my family because I feel like it's more reliable than the male sides of my family. But I think you're right. I 100% agree with you on that. Yeah. But Walter ends up giving, again, Walter is the oldest son of Burrow, but he ends up giving all this information out about 73, farmer, the birthplace being Mississippi. Name of father, he did not know. He did not know. Can anybody read that cursive writing there? I can. I'm just curious. Yeah. Aortic what?
Aortic insufficiency.
Yep, that's it. but yeah, you get a lot of information by being able to kind of decipher this information. And being able to read cursive. And I don't know if they still teach cursive in school, but yeah. And lucky for me, right? We know that Burroughs' death, was documented, and we know that he was buried at Mount Moriah Cemetery, and the date of his burial was February 26, 1920. Keep in mind, this man passed February 25th, 1920. He was buried the next day.
But they could afford to get a doctor to come. They had money.
Yeah. Because now, and keep in mind, A.M. Macaulay lived in the community too. And you're right, he made a house call at some point. And
so Burrow was in good standing.
Yeah, with good standing with them. Yeah, that's right.
Then you didn't have to wait so long for family members to come.
Yep.
Everybody see it.
Yep. Now again, so A.M. Macaulay, again, we just tied him into a previous record where we were looking at Loris registering a few years before this event for the military. A.M. Macaulay ends up moving his practice into town in Byhalia, and he buys again a home, one of those nice homes. And even at that time, it was really nice. He was the second owner of Thistledome. But he went on to be a very well-known physician in the county. He was the go-to guy in the community. And to your point, yeah, you're right. I think that is a clue that they had some good standing with him, or for sure could pay for him. So I'll kind of hold off there. Are there any questions? Because I want to make sure if there are, that we can answer them. Yes, Sonia asked the question, is the Microsoft Family Tree free? It is free. And again, one of the perks of being able to use it is, it's completely local to the computer that you decide to download it on. And then when you get ready to share it on to an individual or want to share it to Ancestry, you can do that as well pretty quickly. Okay. So again, one of the things that we want to do here was just kind of highlight some of the free tools. Ancestry, I'm telling you, is one of those nice tools to have. And while it does require a subscription for some services, it's still a valuable resource. And a lot of the free stuff is valuable as well. So I'm going to referencing the table. One more thing, and just for the sake of time, I don't know if I have enough time to go through everything. Through Family Search, was able to also get information related to marriage records. So In Burroughs' case, I got all three of his marriage certificates. So this is an example of the records that are currently on site at the Marshall County Courthouse. But also, when the Mormons came to town, they scanned it. They digitized all of this stuff. So what we're seeing here is the digital scan of that. And notice this is Burroughs' first marriage certificate. He's listed as color, and he is, also listed by name Burrell McClarity. And if we look at, again, for me, if we look at that family tree that we started out with that my sisters put together, he's listed on that family tree as well. And in this case, we have a witness, Pleasant Jones. So it might have been a buddy of his, it might have been a friend. It was somebody that he was tight enough with to ask to go to the courthouse with him and then sign his name.
What was $200?
Well, it says of the county of Marshall and state of Mississippi are held and firmly bound unto the state of Mississippi in the penal sum of $200, current money of the United States of America, which payment well and truly to be made and performed, we and each of us do hereby find ourselves, our heirs, executors, administrators, and assigns jointly and severely, firmly by these present. I guess it was just a payment for filing it, but that's a little expensive. Yeah, I would assume too. But it's common verbiage on all of them.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. I think it's maybe similar to like a deed. I don't know for sure. It may be similar to what you see on the deed. So on land records, even now, you'll see fees or called out on it, but it may not necessarily be the purchase fee. And I don't know. I don't know if that's more of a legal. Oh yeah. Now this record is important because this is the first record that I've been able to find on Burrow appearing up in his tree, and it's dated 1873. Keep in mind, 1870. I hadn't found him on any census record just yet, but he does appear, of course, here on this record of marriage.
His family was so important to us.
Mm-hmm. And notice how he couldn't write a signature, but he left his mark. And then Pleasant Jones does the same thing. And then it states here that Ella Rankin is the person that he ends up marrying, his first wife, mother of Walter. And then they end up living in the Mariana Tallapoosa community. And it also has the preacher, looks like a J. Campbell, who performed the ceremony. And then other clues, George Myers, who was the clerk at the time. So his office took this information and documented. He remains the clerk for a very long time. And, in Burroughs' case, he marries 3 times. And each time he took somebody else to the courthouse with him. So in this case, R.H. Hill was his witness on this particular date, 1884, in October 1884. And he marries Alice Guy. And here's Mr. Myers showing up again years later. And then we look at Ida, when he marries Ida, his last wife. We notice that Joseph Lester went up there with him this time in 1889. And there's Mr. Myers again, still working up there in the courthouse, and his signature is on everything. Burroughs still leaves his mark. And Joseph Lester did the same thing. This looks to be, because I don't see a pastor or anybody that's given the rights, this looks to be that it might have been just a courthouse marriage or ceremony and whatnot, and they just made it official would be my guess. And I only say that because I don't see anybody referenced here as giving the matrimony rights. But this is one of those things again that Family Search can kind of help with and whatnot. If we kind of started off kind of looking at one part of my tree, and I want to say, for instance, with Philip Sanderson, and then a Sarah Fraley. They were married in 1877, and they couldn't write their names, but they left their marks. And on this particular one, the person who gave them their rights isn't listed, but George B. Myers is. So his name shows up over the course of 20, 30 years working up there in the courthouse. Okay. The last thing I want to show our group was some of the resources that we have here at Rosenwald. And we've done this with partnership between us and the Marshall County History Museum. And we've been able to kind of share or get a lot of cool information from them. For instance, what you see on the side of you, Gracie, are some of the photos and different things that we were able to collect from the museum related to Russ College and the industrial school. The museum is in Holly Springs, and I can give you the exact address.
Yeah.
But it's in Holly Springs, and it's open Tuesday through Saturday.
Oh, okay.
And it has a lot of Marshall County history in it. But one of the things,
Anything about MI?
they got, it's some stuff about MI in there as well, and it's old. So throughout the decades, you see people giving information to the museum, right, for safekeeping, and then in hopes that they can kind of help to tell their story. So you see different groups in the county kind of coming. They'll go to them to try to see if there's some treasures there that they can kind of help to kind of tell the story with. One of the things that we got from them also was this digital file that you guys can probably see too behind me. In this particular file, someone was able to use the land records in town to compile a list of land holdings from 1858. And with this particular map lists out all of the landowners in 1858 based off of their tax records. So just to kind of put that into perspective, if you want to know who owned different pieces of land within the county in 1858, this map shows us. So for instance, here's finding Smith Grove Church, for instance. So if we look at Smith Grove Church, for my family, Smith Grove Church is one of those family churches. And we know that there's a lot of history there related to it. And in 1858, if we look back at the area, and the proximity of where Smith Grove Church was, you see the Faulkner family owning land around Smith Grove Church, and these are the white Faulkners. We see the Yarborough family owning land around Smith Grove Church. We see the Bird family owning land around that church, and the list goes on. We see Cox family. And what this leads us to conclude, right, is we know this is 1858. We know this is before the Civil War. These are likely plantation lands, right? We know these are plantation lands, and we know approximately where they are just by kind of looking at this map that has been put together. So, and Yarborough is pretty noticeable because right down the road in current time, Yarborough Chapel exists. We know the Faulkner family was pretty prominent in that area too. And even now, Faulkner Park is right up the road from there, right? Because Black Faulkner still exists. And then we see the Jones family living in proximity to Smith Grove Church. And that's pretty substantial. Um, and even when we look at churches like Union Valley, for instance, which is another family church, we see the Parrish family. They're up there. We see the Richmond family. We see the Parker family. And this all gives us clues to who was living where and then the relationships that might have been there with these particular landowners. Because in some cases, we get lucky and we have access to wills and probate records. And in those wills and probate records, they list out not only their livestock and the actual land property that they have, but they also list out slaves by name. So that's how this tool can be used potentially, is identifying the people who are called out on these listings, and then being able to figure out, hey, um, who did they list out as being their quote unquote property? And in a lot of cases, the people that they enslaved. So that is all for today, y'all. If there are no questions, we did record this event. Sorry, Melba, go ahead.
Yes, that map that you just showed, that's available for Ivy Chapel or?
Yep, this map is available here at the school for now.
Okay.
One thing that we want to make sure that we do is figure out all of the sources and whatnot, because we want to make sure that we give credit to the individual who put it together. So as it stands now, it is accessible and available here at our school at the Ivy Chapel Rosenwald. So people who are coming in doing research, they can have access to it here on site. And then we'll figure out the best way to kind of list this. Now, I will say this. People who have the time can also access Family Search to look at the records for the records for property. That is for sure listed there, but it's not in this pretty presentation. So
yeah, I like this presentation. That's really nice.
yeah. All right, y'all. Well, this, like I said, this is recorded, so we'll appreciate you all joining us, and we thank you all for being here, and hope you guys have a good day and a happy Easter. Thank you.
Happy Easter. Have a great day.
Happy